I am so pleased now to be joined by Patricia Traina of GiantsCountry.com, also the Locked On Giants podcast, if you might be familiar with that as a diehard Giants fan. Hi, Patricia. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Probably not as good as Giants fans are doing, making it to the playoffs for the first time since 2016. The beginning of the season was interesting. They came out with such a bang, and I think savvy Giants fans probably knew that at some point their schedule would catch up with them. But nevertheless, they find themselves in the playoffs with Brian Daboll at the helm. How would you describe the job that he has done just getting them to this point this season?
Just amazing. I mean, and it's as amazing as it's been so basic and common sense. He takes it one day at a time, one game at a time. A lot of coaches have said that in the past, but sometimes I think they can't help but look ahead a little bit. But Daboll has stuck to he's been a man of his word. He has stuck to his guns. It's been one game at a time. And the best part of it is he constantly says he believes in his players. So even if a player screws up, sometimes a player will screw up. He'll land in the coach's doghouse. He'll say, okay, you know what? You made a mistake. Let's fix it and let's move on. So I think he earned the trust of the players. He certainly has, been consistent with his message. And he's put these players in the position to succeed. And they know it, they appreciate it, and they love him for it.
He's definitely stuck to his script. There was one press conference when they had a chance to make it into the playoffs where I think he spoke with, reporters, probably you and others, for a number of minutes and didn't actually even say the word playoffs once. I mean, he really pushes that sort of mantra of we're taking it day by day, we're taking it week by week. Players' availability depends on the performance that week. Is he unique in that way in terms of coaches across the league? Is there anything that he does that you've seen that makes him special in terms of what he brings?
I mean, he's the type of guy who I think if you met him, you'd say you'd want to sit down and have a drink with him or dinner with him. He's very relaxed. He's not a phony. He's not scripted. He's sincere, but at the same time, he's also protective of the program. He's guarded. He's not going to give away any state secrets. He's not going to put any pressure on guys. For example, with an injured player, he's not going to say, oh, we're definitely, let's take Adoree Jackson, for example. The hope is Adoree Jackson's going to play Sunday. Well, he's not going to sit there and say, oh, he's definitely going to play. He's like, we'll see, because he knows things happen. So just all that has just made him very likable. He's good with the fans, which is certainly, doesn't hurt his case. And he put together a really good staff and just the whole program, considering he's a first-year head coach, all that experience he gained in 20 plus years of coaching as an assistant at different levels has really, come together. And he's put together this program and gotten the Giants ahead of schedule.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned the timeline. It just feels like he fits. And it feels like he's been there for so much longer. And I guess that's a credit to his staff and the way that he's done things. I mean, this season has flown by. And I feel like it was just yesterday we were saying, all right, this is a make or break season for Daniel Jones. This is what he needs to accomplish this year. And now we're here. And the last couple of games, I feel like have been great for his confidence that he's sort of blossomed in some of these tougher moments. What's your assessment of how Daniel Jones has done this season?
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones, it was a make or break season for him. And so far he's making it. I mean, he cut down on the turnovers. He finished with a career high in completion percentage. The touchdowns is probably the one thing that you can maybe ding him on, but, look at his supporting cast. And above all, he's made plays. He's cut down on the mistakes, the what are you doing throws that he used to make in the past. He has 5 of his career 8 game-winning drives this season alone. And, he's blossomed before our eyes into a guy that you can say, okay, he can carry this team across the finish line and deliver in a tough spot.
Is that him being healthy? Is that him maturing? Is that Daboll's influence? Is it a combination?
I think it's a combination. I mean, certainly being healthy has helped. And, I didn't mention his running, which has also been, very instrumental in his game. But, Daboll came in with a reputation as being somewhat of a quarterback whisperer. He fixed Josh Allen up in Buffalo. And, when it came to the Giants, he brought Mike Kafka, a former NFL quarterback who, of course, did his coaching stint under Andy Reid with Patrick Mahomes down in Kansas City. So really, the Giants were intent on fixing Daniel Jones. John Mara last year, around this time, as a matter of fact, when they hired Joe Shane, the general manager, and then later Dable, John Mara said, we've done everything possible to screw this kid up. Well, now they're trying to fix this kid, and they've done so. I mean, they still have work to do. They still got to, further beef up that offensive line. They've got to get him some receivers, that are legitimate number one, number two type receivers. But certainly, considering what Daniel Jones has had to work with this year and the injuries, let's not, especially on the offensive line, which has made the protection kind of, inconsistent, he's done pretty well.
So what is his future? I'm guessing, I'm kind of reading between the tea leaves. You see a future for him in New York with the Giants?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think if they can get him done before he hits free agency, because I think there might be some teams out there that are going to take a look at him, a lot of quarterback needy teams, but I think the Giants want him back. I think he's going to get paid handsomely. I think I want to say the franchise tag for a quarterback is somewhere around 32, 33 million. It's what it's projected. So he's going to probably get a new deal somewhere, north of that, I would say. Is it going to be a long-term blockbuster type of deal? Probably not. I think it's going to probably be more of a shorter-term deal, but we'll see how far he takes them in the playoffs, because the farther he goes, the richer that young man's going to become.
Yeah, and you mentioned his ability to run the ball a little bit. He has developed into something of a dual threat. When you look at his numbers, I mean, they're split. He does have the ability to kind of make plays on his feet. Do you expect that to be a factor against the Vikings? I mean, these teams just played each other a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was closer than many anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a part of the game plan. I mean, look, I think we can all say that the Vikings are going to probably hone in on Saquon Barkley. What every team has tried to do that. You take Saquon out of the game, and now you maybe get Daniel Jones running a little bit, and you give them an extra player now that they have to worry about in that ground game. So I would be very surprised if Daniel's running isn't deployed more in that game. It wasn't deployed as much the last time, but I think this time it will be.
Do you expect anything different in this game when you look at the way that these two teams matched up a couple of weeks ago?
Well, hopefully the Giants will be a little healthier on defense. That they will definitely have Xavier McKinney, who they didn't have the first time around. They are hoping to have Adoree Jackson. That's not, as we record this, it's not definite, but there is optimism that he will be back, because Justin Jefferson absolutely wrecked them last time. He went up against Fabian Moreau, and I think, ideally you want to have Adoree Jackson on Justin Jefferson, who's really, really good, by the way. So, that changes how defensive coordinator Wink Martindale can call the defense. He can maybe be a little bit more aggressive than he normally was back in that first meeting. So that's definitely something that's going to change. And, on offense, I think you got to get the tight end involved a little bit more. I was surprised the tight end only had like 2 pass targets. That would be Daniel Bellinger, by the way. And of course, getting that run game, more in tune with the game, because last time they passed like 42 times. So that it wasn't really a balanced offense.
And Kenny Golladay is back in the fold as well. All indications that he'll be available.
He'll be available. How much he'll play or contribute, I don't know. I mean, certainly last week against the Philadelphia Eagles in the regular season finale, we saw hints of what the Giants were hoping to get with him. But, I can't sit here and say for sure if he's going to be a big part of the game plan. Up until now, he's kind of been more of a decoy for them. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to see. I mean, kind of Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, and Richie James have been carrying this receiver group, the last several games. So, look, if you're the coaching staff, it's a good problem to have. If Kenny Golladay gives you a good week of practice and shows that he can be a part of the game plan, then why not? I mean, he's a big receiver. He's good at the contested catches. So why not add another weapon to that offense?
You mentioned Adoree Jackson, one of the biggest question marks, maybe the biggest question mark heading into the weekend. Is there anybody else that we haven't mentioned so far, Patricia, that you think could be an X factor, or you're waiting to hear back health-wise ahead of the matchup as of this taping?
Yeah, I think we have to talk about Azeez Ojulari. the outside linebacker. Now he in the first game against the Vikings had his ankle rolled up on, so he was kind of gimpy and he wasn't able to play. They sat him in the regular season finale. He did a little bit. I think he had something like 7 snaps in the Colts game, which is the game the Giants clinched a playoff berth. But you pair him with Kayvon Thibodeau on the other side, and now it becomes a pick your poison type of situation for the offense. Who are you going to double team? And Ojulari, if I'm not mistaken, I think has at least a half a sack in just about every game he's played since returning from IR. So he's going to be a big factor, I think. And also, we'll talk about Leonard Williams, because Leonard Williams has been playing with a bad neck injury that he's been trying to gut out. Now, he sat also last week. The plan is to play him. I don't know how much he's going to play, but Leonard Williams, this is his first time going to the playoffs in his career. I don't see him missing that game. You pair Leonard Williams up with Dexter Lawrence on that defensive line, and good luck trying to figure out who you're going to double team.
Our producer dug up an interesting stat as well while we're kind of covering the defense and who's going to be available and not available. And I know you mentioned with Wink Martindale and his style. So he is known for being aggressive, obviously, in his style of play with his play calling. And our producers alerted me to the fact that the Giants have blitzed a league high 39.7%. So dialing up the blitzes from Wink Martindale significantly. So if you blitz at that high of a rate and you put the pressure on the corners to basically cover on the day that Justin Jefferson had in the first meeting, I mean, do you think that Wink Martindale might actually blitz less and play more coverage to help out the secondary? Or how do you anticipate sort of handling the blitz?
Yeah, I think the key to the blitzes is you got to get home, and you can't, run into a wall and just stand there, because the longer you ask the defensive secondary to hold their coverage, the more likely something bad's going to happen. So, you might see a few tricks, if you will, some stunts, some twists, some fancy stuff. Martindale, he is who he is. He likes to be aggressive. He likes to blitz. And if he has all hands on deck in that front seven, Ojulari, like I said, Thibodeau, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, who, by the way, leads the team in sacks this year. I mean, who would have seen that coming? If they can get home, Kirk Cousins, the Vikings quarterback, has shown that he's just not good in the face of pressure. Very few quarterbacks are, but Kirk Cousins in particular is not very good in the face of pressure. And so they can get him to maybe throw the ball a little bit early or make one of those, what are you doing type of throws. That could maybe benefit the Giants and help them in the back end of the defense if they should find themselves short-staffed.
Has Kayvon Thibodeau put that unfortunate sort of incident behind him with Nick Foles and making the snow angel and all this stuff on the field behind him? Do you think, Patricia? I mean, we knew that he had a big kind of fun personality, that New York would be a great market for him. And he did everything right and said everything right for the majority of the season. I think a lot of people were turned off maybe by that gesture heading into the postseason. What has he said about that? And do you think Giants fans are beyond that moment?
Yeah, I think they're definitely beyond that moment. I mean, for what it's worth, I believe that Thibodeau didn't know that Nick Foles was hurt. I think if he had known, maybe he would have reacted a little differently. And the fallout after that, I don't want to say too much was, a bigger deal was made of it than needed to be. But, basically he said what he had to say. And I think people kept picking at that carcass, if you will. Mm-hmm. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of these elaborate sack celebrations. I'm kind of old school, but I'm not going to also begrudge a player for celebrating, because look, it's in the moment and whatnot. But I think Thibodeau put it behind him, and he's young. He's got to learn, I mean, he's 21 years old, 22 years old. I mean, who amongst us when we were that age didn't do stuff that we look back on now and we say, gosh, I wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah. So as you look at this matchup, and I know working for Giants Country and the Locked On Giants podcast, right, I imagine that there is a little bit of bias here, but this is in your viewpoint, is this a winnable game against the Vikings for this New York team, depending on who's healthy and who's not, with where they are right now, how they're playing, the leadership that they have? I mean, how winnable of a game is this?
I think it's very winnable. I mean, you look at how the teams have been performing down the stretch, and the Giants, even though they went 2-2 in their final 4 games, they've been playing solid football. They stood toe to toe with the Vikings, who are, as we know, are the third seed. They stood toe to toe with the Eagles, the number one seed, with their backups, no less. So, even though I always go back to 2007 and that game, against the New England Patriots, who were, undefeated at the time, and the Giants stood toe to toe with them. And what that game did, even though they lost, is it put confidence in them for their playoff run. So I see kind of a similar situation now. The Giants 2-2 to end the game, end the season, but the confidence is growing. And I think when you have that confidence, and if they can just clean up some of the, the mishaps that they had in the first game with the Vikings and stick to their plan, make a few tweaks here and there, but I think they'll probably keep most of the same game plan. I think the Giants can surprise a few people.
Has that confidence translated into composure when you consider the fact that Minnesota has won an astounding 11 one-score games this season? I mean, they seem to be able to execute when things get really tight. Are the Giants in a position right now to be able to do that, to keep their composure should this come down to a score or a gaffe or a field goal?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, Brian Daboll is very good with keeping them in the moment. Something bad happens, okay, forget about it, move on. Something good happens, don't dwell on it, move on. So I think he's very good at finding that middle ground. The players know what's at stake. All week long we've been asking them about the playoffs. We've been asking them about the playoffs for the last month, and they're like, look, we're not stupid. We know what's at stake here. We know what we have to do. So I think they will be composed. I think they're going to go in focused. I don't think you're going to see them make too many, if any, stupid mistakes that you sit there and you go, what are you doing, man? So I feel pretty good about where they're at, just based on, what I've observed this week from them in the locker room. And I'm excited about the game.
Patricia, thank you so much for being with me. One last question for you before I let you go. How should Giants fans feel about this season?
I think you got to be happy about this season. I mean, at the start of the year, if anybody had told me that they would be in the playoffs and that they would have a winning record, I would have been like, I don't think so. I think I predicted 8-9 actually for the Giants. I said they would be better than last year, but I didn't think they would be this good. And look, this is we use the term playing with house money, which, by the way, the Giants don't like when we use that term, but I'm going to use it anyway. But, look, nobody expected them to be in this position. If you consider that Joe Schoen had a bad salary cap situation that hamstrung him, you look at the injuries that they've had, you look at the fact that this was a new staff with new systems, everybody had to get to know each other, everybody was evaluating each other. For them to do what they've done, to catch the league off guard, you got to be happy if you're a Giant fan. And you look at in the future, 11 draft picks are projected for them, plus a healthier cap situation. And Joe Schoen, like I said, he's proven just by his pickups in season just how effective he is and how he knows what he's doing. So the future's bright for this Giants franchise team.
It certainly sounds that way. It seems like they are on an upward trajectory, which I know a lot of Giants fans have been waiting a long time for. Patricia Traina of GiantsCountry.com, the Locked on Giants podcast. Thank you so much for your insight ahead of the weekend, and go Giants.
Thank you.